Introductory music with a slow cosmic and slightly ominous tone begins. Visuals of deep space, nebulae, and distant galaxies drift by. Narrator: in the unending darkness between the stars there is a profound silence. It is a quietude measured not in minutes or hours but in eons. A vast cosmic stillness, stretching across voids so immense that the light from one galaxy takes millions of years to reach its neighbour. For all of our history, humanity has shouted into this abyss, listening for an echo, a whisper, any sign that we are not alone. We have built colossal ears of steel and wire, turning them to the heavens, hoping to catch a single structured murmur amidst the chaotic symphony of the universe. For decades, the silence was all we heard back. The static hiss of creation's dawn, the rhythmic drumming of dying stars, but never a voice, never a reply, until now. Because from a previously unremarkable patch of sky, in a corner of the cosmos we had barely glanced at, something has arrived. It is a pattern in the noise, a rhythm in the chaos, a transmission so strange, so structured, so utterly alien that it has challenged everything we thought we knew about our place in the universe. It comes from an object designated AT25 P233I Atlas. And for the past 3 years, a secret consortium of the world's finest minds has been trying to determine its origin. Now, the investigation is over, the evidence has been weighed, the verdict is in, and the silence is about to be broken forever. Music swells and then fades into a more investigative rhythmic tone. Visuals shift to a vast, arid landscape at night. A huge radio telescope array is visible. The story begins not with a bang, but with a flicker on a screen. Here, in the bone-dry air of the Atacama Desert, the Atlas Transient Hemisphere Survey scans the sky relentlessly. Its mission is not to search for life, but for cosmic violence, exploding stars, colliding neutron stars, the cataclysms that forge the elements. It is a celestial watchdog, sifting through petabytes of data every single night. The computers are programmed to look for the unusual, for sudden flashes of energy. But the system is also designed to filter out the mundane, the predictable pulse of known cosmic objects, and especially the noise of our own world. Radio frequency interference, or RFI, is the bane of the modern astronomer. The ceaseless chatter of our own civilization, our satellites, our mobile phones, our microwave ovens, threatens to drown out the faint whispers from the cosmos. So the algorithms are ruthless, trained to discard anything that smells of Earth. 3 years ago, on a Tuesday like any other, a junior astrophysicist named Dr. Aris Thorne was running a diagnostic on this very filtering software. He was examining the digital scrap heap, the terabytes of data the system had flagged as noise and rejected. It was a routine, tedious task. Imagine searching for a single misplaced grain of sand on an infinite beach. Most of what he saw was exactly what he expected. The faint telltale signatures of geosynchronous satellites, the brief messy bursts of ground-based radar, the electronic detritus of a talkative planet. But then, something caught his eye. It was a recurring pattern in the discarded data, a sequence so faint it was barely distinguishable from background radiation. The filtering algorithm had correctly identified its non-celestial origin, tagging it as probable terrestrial interference, and had thrown it out. Yet something about its structure was wrong. It was too consistent, too clean. Human-made interference is typically messy. It fluctuates in strength, it drifts in frequency, and it rarely repeats with perfect mathematical precision. This was different. This was a sequence of ultra-short, narrow-band pulses, appearing and disappearing with a clockwork regularity that was chillingly perfect. The pattern was based on a sequence of prime numbers, a hallmark long theorized by scientists like Carl Sagan and Frank Drake as a potential hailing signal from an intelligent species. A mathematical sequence that is universally true, independent of biology or culture. A beacon that screams, "We are not an accident." Dr. Thorne, initially convinced it was a sophisticated new type of satellite or a military experiment, decided to dig deeper. He tracked the source. If it were from Earth or in orbit around it, Its position relative to the distant stars would change rapidly as the Earth rotated and moved through space. He spent weeks writing new code, forcing the Atlas system to retain this particular noise and triangulate its origin against the backdrop of the fixed cosmos. The result was the first great shock of this story. The source was not moving. It was fixed to a single, unblinking point in the constellation of Piscis Austrinus, a point designated AT25 P233i, a point thousands of light years away. The filtering algorithm had made a mistake. It had correctly identified the signal as artificial, as non-natural, but it had wrongly assumed the intelligence behind it was human. Music becomes more intense and mysterious. Visuals of data streams, scientists in hushed conversations and secure facilities. The moment that realization dawned, a silent alarm was triggered across the global, astronomical community. This was not a press conference moment. This was a moment for quiet, meticulous, and paranoid verification. The history of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, or SETI, is littered with false alarms, with moments of heart-stopping excitement that ultimately dissolved into mundane explanations. There was the infamous wow. A signal of 1977, a powerful 72-second burst of radio waves that perfectly matched our expectations for an alien broadcast, yet was never, ever heard again. There were the perplexing signals that turned out to be from a forgotten Cold War satellite. There were even discoveries of strange periodic emissions that were eventually traced to a microwave oven in the observatory's break room. The universe is filled with cosmic tricksters, and science is a discipline of radical skepticism. Every other possibility must be exhausted before the extraordinary one is even whispered. A clandestine team was assembled, a first contact protocol enacted in secrecy. Radio telescopes around the world, from the Green Bank Observatory in West Virginia to the FAST telescope in China, were discreetly pointed towards AT25 P233i. They waited, and they listened. For months, there was nothing but the familiar static of the void. The team began to fear that this too was another wow. The signal, a cosmic fluke, a one-time ghost in the machine. But then it returned, exactly on schedule, as predicted by the prime number sequence. The broadcast was active for precisely 13 hours, then vanished again into silence, set to reappear in the next cycle. It was real, it was persistent, and it was coming from deep space. Now, the true investigation could begin. The team had to become cosmic detectives, tasked with proving this signal was not from aliens. They had to build a case for a natural explanation, no matter how exotic. Their first and most obvious suspect was a pulsar. Pulsars are the spinning remnants of massive stars that have exploded as supernovae. They're incredibly dense neutron stars, objects so compressed a single teaspoon of their material would weigh billions of tons. They have powerful magnetic fields that channel beams of radiation from their poles. As the star spins, these beams sweep across the cosmos like a lighthouse. If Earth happens to be in the path of one of these beams, our radio telescopes detect a pulse with astonishing regularity. A pulsar could certainly explain the clockwork timing of the signal, but the analogy of a lighthouse is a good one. A lighthouse beam is simple. It is on, then it is off. The signal from AT25 P233i was anything but simple. It wasn't just a pulse, it was a complex modulated transmission. Within each pulse were layers of intricate structure, variations in frequency and amplitude that seem to carry an immense amount of information. Imagine not just a flashing light, but a light that is changing colour, brightness, and focus 1,000,000 times a second, all according to a complex repeating score. Furthermore, pulsars are messy broadcasters. They emit radiation across a wide range of the electromagnetic spectrum. This new transmission was stunningly narrow band, confined to a tiny sliver of the radio dial. Natural phenomena rarely, if ever, exhibit such spectral discipline. The pulsar hypothesis was discarded. The investigators moved on to more exotic suspects. Perhaps a magnetar, a type of neutron star with a magnetic field 1,000 times stronger than a typical pulsar. These objects are known to produce sporadic, colossal bursts of energy. But again, the evidence didn't fit. Magnetar bursts are chaotic and unpredictable, the death throes of a tormented star. The Atlas signal was the opposite, serene, controlled, and mathematically precise. It was not a scream, it was a lecture. Could it be a fast radio burst or FRB? These are one of the greatest mysteries in modern astronomy. Intensely powerful flashes of radio energy lasting only a few milliseconds, originating from galaxies billions of light years away. Their cause is still unknown. But FRBs are, by their nature, bursts. They are cosmic firecrackers. The Atlas signal was a sustained broadcast, a long-form composition that lasted for hours. And while some FRBs have been found to repeat, they do so erratically, not with the perfect cadence of a prime number sequence. Every natural phenomenon the team could imagine, from quasars to black hole mergers, was proposed and systematically dismantled. Each one failed to account for the unique combination of features, the narrow bandwidth, the complex internal modulation, the information-rich structure, and the prime number periodicity. They were running out of culprits. The process of elimination was leading them down a path that was both terrifying and exhilarating. After more than a year of intense secret scrutiny, the team reached a consensus. There was no known natural phenomenon in the universe that could produce this signal. The implications were staggering. They were forced to confront the alternative. The source was, by all scientific definitions, artificial. Music shifts to a more wondrous and historical tone. Visuals of early human astronomy, the Copernican revolution, and modern space exploration. To understand the weight of this conclusion, we must step back and consider our long, lonely search for cosmic companionship. For millennia, we saw the stars as gods, as omens, as a celestial canopy fixed above our world. We believed we were the centre of everything, the sole purpose of creation. Then, science began a great demotion. Copernicus and Galileo moved the Earth from the centre of the solar system. Shapley moved our sun from the centre of the galaxy. Hubble moved our galaxy from the centre of the universe. With each step, our planet, our species, became less significant, more peripheral. We were revealed to be living on a speck of dust orbiting an average star, tucked away in a quiet suburb of a commonplace galaxy, among hundreds of billions of others. This cosmic loneliness gave rise to a profound question. If the universe is so vast, so filled with stars and planets, then where is everybody? This is the heart of the Fermi paradox. In 1961, a young radio astronomer named Frank Drake attempted to bring statistical rigor to this question. He formulated what is now known as the Drake equation. It doesn't provide an answer, but rather it organizes our ignorance. It's a way of estimating the number of detectable civilizations in our galaxy. Think of it as a series of cosmic filters. First, we start with the rate of star formation in our galaxy, a massive number. Then we filter that by the fraction of those stars that have planets. Thanks to missions like Kepler and TESS, we now know this number is incredibly high. It seems that planets are not the exception, but the rule. Nearly every star has them. The next filter. What fraction of those planets are suitable for life? Planets in the habitable zone, where liquid water could exist on the surface. Again, our discoveries suggest that billions of such worlds exist in the Milky Way alone. Then the equation moves into realms of deeper uncertainty. What fraction of those habitable planets actually develop life? What fraction of life becomes intelligent? What fraction of intelligent life develops technology capable of interstellar communication? And finally, the most sobering filter of all, for how long do those civilizations survive and continue to broadcast? This last term, L, the lifetime of a civilization, is the great unknown. Our own technological civilization has only been broadcasting signals for about a century. Have others survived their own technological adolescence? Or do all advanced species inevitably destroy themselves, falling silent after a brief, brilliant flash? The Atlas signal seemed to provide an answer. At least one had survived. At least one had reached a level of technological maturity far beyond our own. The focus of the investigation now shifted entirely to the source, a T25P233I. What was this place? Using the world's most powerful telescopes, not just radio but optical and infrared, the team began to assemble a portrait of the signal's home. The light from this system had travelled for nearly 4,000 years to reach us. We were not hearing them as they are now, but as they were during the Bronze Age on Earth. The star itself was unremarkable, a G-type main sequence star, much like our own Sun. Slightly older, perhaps 6 billion years old, compared to our Sun's 4.5 billion. This was promising. It had given life a billion-year head start. But the true revelation came when they analysed the star's planets. There were several, but one stood out. A super-Earth, orbiting squarely in the middle of the habitable zone, larger than our planet, with a thicker atmosphere. But the shocking discovery was what they couldn't see. The planet's light curve, the tiny dimming of the star's light as the planet passes in front of it, was strange. It wasn't the clean, predictable dip they expected. It was messy, complex, and suggested the presence of enormous artificial structures in orbit around the planet. Things that blocked the starlight in unnatural ways. The data was consistent with the theoretical models of a Dyson swarm, a megastructure of orbiting solar collectors designed to capture a huge portion of the star's energy output. It was the signature of a Kardashev Type II civilization, a species that had transcended the energy limitations of their home planet and had begun to harness the full power of their local star. We, by contrast, are still a Type 0 civilization, living off the fossilized sunlight stored in our planet's crust. The beings who built this were, for all practical purposes, gods. Music becomes deeply atmospheric, a mix of awe and trepidation. Visuals of abstract, complex data visualizations and CGI renderings of alien megastructures. This revelation changed everything. The signal was not just a hail from another technological species, it was a broadcast from a civilization of unimaginable power and antiquity. The pressure to decipher the message became immense. It was no longer just a collection of prime-numbered pulses. The internal modulation, the complex symphony within the signal, was the true prize. Teams of linguists, cryptographers, mathematicians, and even musicians were brought in. They attacked the problem from every conceivable angle. They converted the radio waves into sound, hoping to hear a language. The result was a cascade of intricate, non-random noise that defied simple interpretation. They converted it into images, searching for a pattern. This yielded more promising results. Recurring geometric shapes, mathematical constants like pi and the golden ratio, and what appeared to be a diagram of atomic elements. It was a universal primer, a Rosetta Stone from the stars. It was as if the senders knew their message would be received by a less advanced species, and had designed it as a step-by-step tutorial for understanding their methods of communication. Over 2 years, through painstaking effort and staggering computational power, the team began to unlock the deeper layers of the broadcast. It was not a conversation, it was a library, an encyclopedia. Encoded within the signal was their science, their mathematics, their biology. There were stunningly detailed astronomical charts of their local galactic neighbourhood. There were complex equations that seemed to describe a mastery of physics far beyond our own, hinting at technologies like space-time manipulation and zero-point energy. There was a depiction of their own biochemistry, a double helix similar to our DNA, but with a more complex structure, suggesting a more efficient form of life. And there were images, abstract alien art forms, architectural plans for cities that defied gravity, and finally, a depiction of the broadcasters themselves. They were not the bug-eyed aliens of our fiction. They were elegant, slender beings with a radial symmetry, evolved from a world with different gravity and a different atmospheric pressure. The team stared in awe at the first ever confirmed image of an extraterrestrial intelligence. The sense of triumph was electric. This was it. The single greatest discovery in human history. We had found our neighbours. We had their phone book, their encyclopedia, their family album. But as they translated more and more of the signal, a new, unsettling pattern began to emerge. Something was wrong. The encyclopedia was entirely historical. All the scientific and cultural information was presented in the past tense. The astronomical charts were ancient, mapping a galactic configuration from thousands of years ago. There was no current information, no news, no live conversation, no invitation to talk back. The entire broadcast, all 13 hours of it, was a perfect repeating loop. It was an automated message, a memorial. This led to the final chilling phase of the investigation. The team went back to the source itself, to the star system AT25 P233I. They looked at it with new eyes, using the very latest observational techniques. They performed a detailed spectroscopic analysis of the super-Earth's atmosphere. They were searching for biosignatures, the chemical fingerprints of an active biosphere, things like oxygen, methane, and other gases that on Earth are produced by living organisms. They found none. The atmosphere was sterile, filled with the decay products of industrial collapse, carbon dioxide, sulfur compounds, and radioactive isotopes. The planet was dead. The megastructures in orbit were still there, but they were dark, cold, and drifting. The Dyson swarm was a cosmic graveyard. The signal was not a call, it was an echo, a final, automated message set to broadcast for millennia from a world long since past. A ghost, crying in the dark. This is the verdict. The great universe-altering discovery is not that we have made contact, it is that we have missed it. The signal from AT25 P233I is unequivocally artificial. It is the product of a brilliant, ancient, and powerful intelligence. But that intelligence is gone. We do not know how they died. The encyclopedia they left behind contains no mention of war, or plague, or disaster. Perhaps it was a calamity so swift they had no time to record it. Or perhaps they chose not to. Perhaps they wanted to be remembered for their achievements, not their ending. The L in the Drake equation, the lifetime of a technological civilization, proved, in their case, to be finite. They shone brilliantly for a time, long enough to rearrange their solar system and build a monument of information, and then their light went out. Music becomes somber, elegiac, and deeply philosophical, visuals of Earth from space, shots of human civilization, nature, and art. So what does this mean for us? The discovery of the Atlas signal has not answered the Fermi paradox. It has sharpened it into a terrifying warning. We're not alone in the universe, but the universe may be a far lonelier and more dangerous place than we imagined. The heavens are not silent because there is no one out there. They may be silent because the civilizations that rise to prominence do not last. The Great Filter, the evolutionary hurdle that stops species from colonizing the galaxy, might not be behind us. It might be in our future. The Atlas signal is both a gift and a cautionary tale. The gift is the knowledge within it, an immense library of science and wisdom from a civilization a billion years our senior. It will take us centuries, perhaps millennia, to fully unpack and understand it. It could unlock secrets that will cure our diseases, solve our energy crises, and finally allow us to travel to the stars. It is a legacy of hope, a roadmap to a future we could not have imagined on our own. But the cautionary tale is woven into the very fabric of its existence. It is a message in a bottle from a shipwreck. It tells us that intelligence, technology, and even the power to harness a star are no guarantee of survival. The creators of this masterpiece of a broadcast are gone. They have become the silent gods of a dead world. The verdict on the alien signal is in. It is real, it is intelligent, and it is a requiem. We have picked up a phone call only to hear a recording that says the party we are trying to reach is no longer in service. The discovery leaves us with the most profound questions of all. Will we learn from their example? Will we use the knowledge they have bequeathed to us to overcome our own destructive tendencies? Can we become the first species to outlive our own technological infancy? The silence of the cosmos has been broken, not by a conversation, but by a final will and testament. We now know that the universe has brought forth other minds, but we may be the only ones left to hear their story. Our loneliness has not ended. It has only taken on a new, more poignant shape. We are now the keepers of a forgotten memory, the inheritors of a silent legacy. The search continues, but its purpose has changed. We no longer listen just for a hello, but also for a goodbye, hoping that somewhere in the endless dark another light has not yet gone out. Final shot of the Earth, a beautiful, fragile blue marble hanging in the vast, silent darkness. Music swells with a tone that is both melancholic and hopeful, then fades to black. Imagine a single silver needle, suspended in the absolute silence of the deep void. It is a fragile sliver of refined matter, no longer than a human finger, drifting through a darkness so profound that light itself seems to lose its way. This needle is not merely a tool, but a symbol of precision, a singular point of intent in a universe that possesses no inherent direction. To the scale of a human life, it is a trifle. To the scale of the cosmos, it is an impossibility, a defiance of the chaos that usually governs the distribution of atoms. Yet, as we draw back our gaze, zooming out from this microscopic sentinel, we begin to perceive the monumental structure that surrounds it. This is the titanosphere, a construction of such unimaginable proportions that it challenges the very definitions of architecture and physics. It is a shell of dense alloys and crystalline lattices, wrapping itself around a dying star like a shroud or a womb. Here, the needle is not a lost artifact, but a vital component, a minute sensor designed to detect the subtle vibrations of a collapsing epoch. We are witnessing the intersection of the infinitesimal and the colossal, a paradox where the survival of an entire civilization rests upon the integrity of a sliver of steel against the inexorable weight of the abyss. In this frozen theatre of the vacuum, the titanosphere operates as a desperate mechanism. For 5 billion years, the star at its heart provided the warmth and radiation necessary for life to flourish on distant rocky outposts. But stars are not eternal. They are finite engines, governed by the ruthless laws of thermodynamics. As the fuel of the primordial furnace began to exhaust itself, the inhabitants of this system did not resign themselves to oblivion. Instead, they reached out into the void, harvesting the remnants of shattered moons and the metallic cores of the dead planets to weave this tapestry of steel. They sought to capture every stray photon, every flickering ember of a fading sun, to sustain their existence for just a few million more years. The scale paradox is revealed here in its most brutal form. The needle, so small it could be swallowed by a grain of sand, is the only thing capable of measuring the minute shifts in the star's gravity that signal the onset of a final, catastrophic collapse. One single needle amidst a sphere that spans hundreds of millions of kilometers. It is the witness to the end of time. The abyss does not care for such efforts. To the universe, the titanosphere is but a temporary clump of matter, a brief anomaly in the long, cold history of entropy. The silence of the cosmos is not an absence of sound, but a presence of indifference. As we observe the sphere, we see the scars of eons of bombardment by cosmic rays and the relentless attrition of micrometeorites. The outer skin of the structure is pitted and grey, a graveyard of lost ambitions. Inside, the mechanisms of the sphere hum with a symphony of artificial energy, a hollow echo of the natural fusion that once roared within the star. The designers of this place are long gone, their biological forms transcended into digital ghosts or buried beneath the dust of forgotten worlds. What remains is the machine, a lonely sentinel guarding a light that is slowly turning into a shadow. This is the destiny of all complex systems. They strive for order, they build great monuments to their own cleverness, yet they are always unravelling at the edges. The inexorable pull of the void is a tide that no wall, no matter how vast, can truly hold back. Consider the physics of such a structure. To keep a sphere of this magnitude from collapsing under its own gravity, or being torn apart by the centrifugal forces of its rotation, requires a mastery of materials that borders on the divine. The alloys are woven at the molecular level, reinforced by fields of concentrated energy that defy the simple logic of the primordial era. Yet, even these wonders are subject to decay. The atomic bonds within the needle are slowly fraying. The crystalline lattices of the sphere are developing microscopic fractures, thin veins of failure that will one day grow into gaping maws of destruction. This is the tragedy of the titanosphere. It was built to endure for eternity, but it was forged in a universe that knows only change. The very light it seeks to capture is the thing that will eventually destroy it, as the radiation pressure from the star fluctuates, pushing and pulling against the inner walls like a trapped beast seeking its release into the eternal dark. If we were to stand upon the inner surface of this sphere, looking up at the gargantuan sun that fills the sky, we would feel the weight of our own insignificance. There is no horizon here, only a curve that rises up to meet itself, a closed loop of human engineering. The air, if there is any left, would be heavy with the scent of ozone and the cold smell of recycled history. Every breath taken would be a gift from a machine that is older than the memories of any living soul. We would be ghosts in a museum of the future, watching the last embers of a cosmic fire. The needle, meanwhile, continues its silent vigil. It is the point of contact between the mind and the void. It measures the descent into the abyss with a cold mathematical precision. It does not fear the coming catastrophe. It does not mourn the loss of the light. It simply records the data, a final testament to the fact that something once existed here, that someone once cared enough to build a needle in the dark. This is the melancholic optimism of the cosmos. Though the titanosphere will eventually crumble, though the star will ignite in a final flash of defiance before collapsing into a cold, dense remnant, the fact that it occurred at all is a miracle of the highest order. For a brief moment in the vast tapestry of time, the universe became aware of itself. It built spheres to catch the sun, and needles to measure the gravity of its own passing. The void may be eternal, and the abyss may be hungry, but the spark of consciousness is a flame that, however small, illuminates the darkness for a time. We are the inheritors of this vision. We are the ones who look upon the ruins of the future and find beauty in the decay. The history of the universe is not just a chronicle of stars and galaxies, but a story of the struggle against the dark, a story of the needle and the sphere, and the quiet, persistent hope that even in the face of oblivion, our presence mattered. The silent sentinel drifts on, a silver sliver against the black, a small, sharp reminder that we were here, and we dared to look into the eye of the eternal. To understand the giants of the future, we must first descend into the depths of our own past, to a moment of quiet revelation in a city by the sea. In the year 1936, the city of Copenhagen was a place of grey skies and the rhythmic ticking of clocks, a world blissfully unaware of the titanic forces churning beneath its cobblestones. Inside a modest home, the morning light filtered through the windows, illuminating the steam rising from a cup of tea. Here sat Inge Lehmann, a woman whose mind possessed a clarity that could pierce through thousands of miles of solid rock. Before her lay sheets of paper covered in the frantic scribblings of the earth itself, the jagged ink lines of seismographic readings that whispered of a secret hidden in the dark. In this domestic silence, a single needle trembled. To an observer, it was merely a delicate instrument reacting to the distant echoes of an earthquake in the South Pacific. But to Lehmann, this needle was a sentinel standing at the edge of a great abyss. It was recording a paradox. According to the established wisdom of the era, the centre of our world was a sea of molten fire, a liquid void that swallowed the primary waves of the Earth's tremors. Yet, the data told a different story. Some waves were returning, bouncing off an invisible wall, reflecting back to the surface like light off a mirror hidden in a darkened room. As she sipped her tea, Lehmann realized that the ground beneath her feet was not a solid monolith, nor was it a simple hollow shell. We were living upon an eggshell of inconceivable fragility. Beneath the gardens of Denmark, beneath the warring empires of Europe and the vast silent stretches of the Pacific, lay a hidden kingdom. She looked at the needle and saw through the crust, through the 2,000 miles of the mantle into the very heart of the machine. There, at the centre of the world, suspended in a pressurized tomb of liquid metal, was a solid sphere of iron and nickel. It was a remnant of the primordial dawn, a ball of fire and metal the size of the planet Pluto, grinding to a halt in the eternal dark. This is the scale paradox that defines our existence. We build our cathedrals, we fight our wars, and we weave the complex tapestry of our civilizations upon a thin, cooling skin of silicate rock. We are like microscopic organisms living on the surface of a cannonball, unaware of the terrifying kinetic energy and the ancient heat that resides just a few dozen miles below our souls. The distance between the comfort of a morning breakfast and the crushing pressures of the inner core is a mere fraction of the diameter of the Earth, yet it is a distance that separates the habitable from the impossible. Layman's discovery unravelled the mystery of the world's engine room. This inner core, this solid sentinel of iron, is the reason the needle of a compass points north. It is the reason we have a magnetic shield to protect us from the lethal radiation of the sun. Without this solid heart, the atmosphere would be stripped away by the solar winds, leaving our world as a cold, dead husk, another silent ruin in the graveyard of the cosmos. The liquid outer core flows around this solid centre, a churning ocean of molten metal that generates the invisible fields of energy that wrap around the planet like a protective cloak. It is a symphony of heat and pressure, a mechanism of such vast proportions that it defies human comprehension. Consider the weight of that iron sphere. It is subjected to pressures 3 million times greater than the air we breathe at sea level. The temperatures at the boundary of the inner core rival the surface of the sun, reaching over 5,000 degrees Celsius. In this hellish crucible, the laws of physics are pushed to their limits. Iron, which would be a gas at such temperatures on the surface, is crushed by the inexorable weight of the world into a crystalline solid. It is a monument to the power of gravity, a dense and glowing heart that has been cooling for billions of years, slowly growing as the liquid around it freezes into the solid core. We are the inhabitants of a cooling cinder. The history of the Earth is a slow descent into the cold. Every volcanic eruption, every shifting tectonic plate, and every earthquake is merely a sigh from this dying engine as it radiates its primordial heat into the void of space. The very ground we trust is in a state of constant glacial flux. The continents are like rafts of pumice floating on a sea of slow-moving rock, drifting across the face of the globe over eons of time. The mountains we call eternal are but temporary wrinkles on the skin of a world that is constantly remaking itself. This realization brings with it a sense of profound melancholic optimism. We are fragile. Our lives are fleeting sparks in the long dark of the planetary epoch. Our cities are built on a foundation that is moving, shifting, and cooling. Yet the fact that we can stand in a room in Copenhagen and use the trembling of a needle to map the heart of a planet is a testament to the transcendence of the human mind. We are the witnesses of the mechanism. We have reached out with our mathematics and our instruments to touch the solid iron at the centre of the abyss, and in doing so we have bridged the gap between the mundane and the cosmic. The needle continues its silent vigil, recording the slow decay and the rhythmic pulse of the world. It reminds us that we are part of a larger, more terrifyingly beautiful story. We are the children of the furnace, living on the cooling crust of a starborn sphere. The iron in our blood was once forged in the hearts of dying suns, and that same iron now sits at the centre of our world, providing the shield that allows us to dream of the stars. We are a part of the tapestry of the cosmos, woven from the same threads of catastrophe and creation that form the galaxies. As the eons pass, the inner core will continue to grow, and the heat will continue to bleed away into the silent void. One day, billions of years from now, the engine will stop. The magnetic shield will fail, and the atmosphere will begin to unravel. The Earth will become a cold, solid tomb, a silent remnant of a once vibrant world. But for this brief moment, this flickering epoch of light and life, the fire still burns, the core still turns, and we, the fragile inhabitants of the eggshell, continue to look upward and downward, seeking to understand the vast and inexorable machinery of the universe. We are the ones who found the iron heart in the dark, and in that discovery, we found ourselves. The needle trembles, the tea grows cold, and the journey into the abyss continues, guided by the light of human reason against the backdrop of the eternal night. To understand the ground upon which we stand, we must first abandon the illusion of its permanence. We inhabit the surface of a titan, yet we are separated from its true nature by a layer of stone so precarious that it defies our sense of security. This crust, the very foundation of our civilizations and our dreams, is a mere eggshell of cooled rock, a fragile rind clinging to the surface of a pressurized furnace. It represents less than 1% of the total volume of the world. Beneath the soil of our gardens and the concrete of our cities lies a realm of shadow and heat that has never known the touch of the sun, a vast and silent interior where the laws of the surface are rewritten by the inexorable weight of the deep. 99% of our planet remains forever unseen by human eyes. It is a staggering realization that we spend our entire lives on the roof of a cathedral of fire, never peering into the nave. The crust is not a solid, unified shield, but a collection of disparate plates floating upon a sea of slow-moving, high-pressure rock. We call it solid, but on the scale of eons, the interior of the Earth behaves with the viscous grace of a glacier or a river of cooling wax. It is a slow-motion symphony of convection, where the primordial heat of the world's birth still churns, driving the movement of the continents and the rising of the mountain ranges. This is the great mechanism, a heat engine of planetary proportions that operates in the absolute darkness of the abyss. In this lightless void, the pressure is so immense that the very atoms of the rock are crushed into new and exotic crystalline forms. Here, the temperature rivals the surface of a star, yet the rock does not melt into a chaotic liquid. Instead, the weight of the world holds it in a state of plastic flow, a dense and glowing mantle that occupies the vast majority of the Earth's mass. We are the inhabitants of a cooling cinder, a thin veneer of stability in a universe defined by flux. To look downward is to gaze into the heart of a catastrophe that has been unfolding for 4,500,000,000 years. For most of human history, this interior was a matter of myth and speculation, a subterranean world of gods and monsters. We were blind to the true structure of our home, limited by the depth of our minds and the reach of our imagination. However, we have found a way to see through the stone. We have learned to use the Earth's own violence as a source of illumination. When the crust fractures and the world trembles in the wake of an earthquake, it sends out a pulse, a rhythmic vibration that travels through the deep. These seismic waves are the messengers of the interior. They speed through the dense rock of the mantle and slow down through the liquid metal of the outer core, bending and reflecting like light passing through a prism. We have constructed a lens to interpret these whispers from the dark. This is the Three-Eye Atlas, a grand conceptual and technological achievement that allows us to map the invisible. It is the only instrument capable of peering through thousands of kilometers of solid stone to witness the heartbeat of the world. Through the Three-Eye Atlas, the opaque Earth becomes translucent. We see the great plumes of heat rising like ghostly pillars from the boundary of the core, and we witness the descent of ancient tectonic plates as they are swallowed by the mantle and dragged back into the furnace to be recycled over millions of years. This is the circulatory system of a living world, a cycle of creation and destruction that operates on a scale of time and space that dwarfs the human experience. The Three-Eye Atlas reveals a world of hidden complexity. We see the remnants of vanished oceans, slabs of cold rock that have spent hundreds of millions of years sinking toward the center of the Earth. We see the great African and Pacific anomalies, massive structures of dense material that sit like mountains at the base of the mantle, their origins and purpose still shrouded in mystery. These are the fossils of the planetary engine, the silent sentinels that govern the movement of the surface. Through this seismic tomography, we understand that the Earth is not a static object but a dynamic process, a tapestry of motion that we are only beginning to unravel. The scale paradox of our existence is that we are the children of this furnace, yet we are utterly separated from it. The heat that keeps our planet alive, that generates the magnetic field protecting our atmosphere from the solar wind, is the same heat that would devour us in an instant if we were to venture too deep. We live in a narrow window of temperature and pressure, a thin slice of habitability on the edge of the void. Our cities are built on the cooling remnants of a star-born sphere, and our very survival depends on the continued functioning of a machine that we can never touch. There is a profound melancholic optimism in this discovery. We are small, fragile, and fleeting, yet we have reached out with our mathematics and our instruments to touch the heart of the abyss. We have used the tremors of the earth to map its soul. The three-eye atlas is a testament to the transcendence of the human mind, our ability to use reason and observation to overcome the limitations of our biology. We have looked into the dark and found not monsters, but a majestic and orderly mechanism. We have found the heartbeat of the world. As the epoch of man continues, we must remain aware of the thinness of the crust beneath us. We are travellers on a cooling raft, drifting across a sea of primordial fire. The mountains will crumble, the oceans will shift, and the continents will eventually merge and tear apart once more. The engine of the Earth is inexorable, driven by the slow decay of radioactive elements and the lingering warmth of the sun's formation. We are the witnesses of this process, the brief observers of a cosmic cycle that will continue long after our voices have fallen silent. The three-eye atlas continues its vigil, recording the slow rhythmic pulse of the mantle. It reminds us that we are part of something vast and ancient, a story written in the language of pressure and time. We are the inhabitants of the 99% shadow, living on the thin, cooled surface of a world that is still very much alive. In the silence of the deep, the rock flows, the core spins, and the earth continues its journey through the cosmos, a glowing jewel of fire and stone wrapped in a delicate skin of life. We have found the echo of the deep, and in that echo we hear the true history of our world, a symphony of heat and gravity that resonates through the eons. Beyond the reach of the deepest drill, deeper than the roots of the most ancient mountains, there exists a frontier that no human eye will ever witness. We are separated from the heart of our world by thousands of kilometers of suffocating rock and white-hot metal, a distance greater than the span of entire continents. Yet, we have found a way to see into this abyss. We have learned to use the Earth itself as a giant vibrating lens. In the year 1936, a Danish seismologist named Inger Lehmann sat amidst a sea of paper records in a quiet room in Copenhagen. She was studying the echoes of a great catastrophe, a massive earthquake that had occurred on the opposite side of the globe near New Zealand. As the tremors from this event rippled through the planet, they acted as messengers, carrying news of the realms they had traversed. Lehmann noticed something that defied the established laws of the era. According to the prevailing wisdom of the early 20th century, the centre of the Earth was a simple, uniform sphere of liquid fire. But the waves told a different story. They were being deflected, refracted, and accelerated in ways that suggested a hidden boundary deep within the darkness. Through a rigorous process of mathematical deduction and lonely observation, she realized that the Earth possessed a secret. Nestled within the liquid outer core was a solid crystalline heart, a sphere of iron and nickel the size of the moon, suspended in a sea of molten metal. To understand this discovery, one must envision the seismic waves as light passing through a prism. When a massive earthquake ruptures the crust, it sends two primary types of vibrations screaming into the deep. The primary waves, or pressure waves, can travel through both solid and liquid, compressing the material like a cosmic accordion. The secondary waves, or shear waves, are more fragile. They move with a side-to-side motion that can only be sustained by the rigid bonds of a solid. When these secondary waves hit the outer core, they are instantly extinguished, swallowed by the liquid abyss. This creates a vast seismic shadow on the far side of the planet, a zone of silence where the Earth's internal screams are muffled. However, Lehman observed that some primary waves were arriving in this shadow zone at unexpected times. They were hitting something dense, something rigid, and bouncing off it like light reflecting from a mirror. This was the first glimpse of the inner core, a solid sentinel at the centre of the world that had remained invisible for 4 billion years. The environment of the outer core is a landscape of primordial fury. It is a sea of molten iron and nickel, 2,000 kilometres thick, where the temperatures rival the surface of the sun. In this realm, the metal does not sit still. It flows in massive, turbulent currents, driven by the heat of the interior and the rotation of the planet. This motion transforms the Earth into a gargantuan dynamo, generating the magnetic field that stretches out into the void to shield our atmosphere from the solar wind. Without this sea of iron, the Earth would be a dead, sterile rock, its air stripped away by the relentless radiation of the cosmos. Yet, as one descends further, passing through this liquid inferno, the laws of physics appear to reach a breaking point. At a depth of 5,100 kilometres, the pressure becomes so immense that it overcomes the frantic energy of the heat. The weight of the entire planet, millions of times the pressure of the atmosphere at the surface, forces the liquid iron to lock together. It crystallises, forming the solid inner core. This crystalline heart is not a static object. It is a dynamic remnant of the Earth's formation, a world within a world. It is composed almost entirely of iron, arranged in a hexagonal lattice that represents a secret geometry hidden from our experience. This iron is not like the metal we use to build our bridges or our skyscrapers. Under the crushing gravity of the deep, its atoms are squeezed into a state of matter that is both exotic and ancient. Recent discoveries suggest that the inner core may even be a single gargantuan crystal, or perhaps a complex tapestry of grain boundaries aligned with the Earth's rotation. It is a place of absolute darkness and unimaginable intensity, yet it is the very anchor of our existence. The inner core is slowly growing, an inexorable process that has been unfolding for eons. As the planet gradually sheds its primordial heat into the cold vacuum of space, the liquid iron at the boundary of the outer core begins to freeze. Atom by atom, the sea of molten metal attaches itself to the solid heart, releasing a final burst of energy that helps drive the currents of the dynamo above. There is a profound scale paradox in the realization that our lives, our civilizations, and our entire history are dependent on the behavior of this hidden sphere. We occupy the thin, fragile skin of a cooling raft, unaware of the titanic forces churning beneath us. The inner core is a time capsule, a remnant of the catastrophe that birthed the solar system. It contains the heavy elements that sank to the centre when the Earth was a ball of molten slag, a testament to the violent sorting process of gravity. When we look at the seismic records, we are not just looking at data. We are listening to the heartbeat of a machine that has been running for 4.5 billion years. We are the witnesses of a silent symphony, where the instruments are made of iron and the music is written in the language of pressure and time. As we contemplate the sea of molten iron and the solid heart within, we are struck by a sense of melancholic optimism. We are a species of the surface, biological entities designed for a narrow range of temperature and light. We are utterly ill-equipped to survive the journey to the centre, yet our minds have reached the abyss nonetheless. Through the work of pioneers like Lehman, we have unravelled the mechanisms of our world, transcending the limitations of our physical bodies to map the invisible. We have found that the Earth is not merely a hollow shell or a chaotic furnace, but a majestic and orderly structure. It is a sentinel in the dark, a complex engine that maintains the conditions for life, even as it slowly, inevitably decays. The journey of the seismic waves is a metaphor for the human condition. We send our thoughts and our instruments into the void, hoping for an echo, a sign that the universe is intelligible. In the discovery of the inner core, we found that answer. We found that the deep is not a place of monsters, but a realm of crystalline perfection and inexorable law. The Earth's heart continues its silent vigil, spinning slightly faster than the rest of the planet, a golden sphere of ancient fire wrapped in a shroud of liquid metal. It is the foundation of our world, the silent partner in the dance of life and death. We are the children of this heat, the brief observers of an eternal process, living out our days on the edge of a vast and glowing mystery. In the silence of the seismic shadow, we have found the true history of our world, a story written in the iron and the flame, echoing through the eons until the final cooling of the cosmos. Beneath the feet of every living creature, beneath the roots of the tallest mountains and the crushing weight of the deepest oceanic trenches, lies a realm of perpetual motion and unimaginable violence. We have long considered the earth beneath us to be solid, a firmament upon which we build our ephemeral empires, yet this stability is a grand illusion. Beyond the crystalline silence of the inner core lies the outer core, a churning subterranean ocean of liquid iron and nickel that spans more than 2,000 kilometers in thickness. This is not a sea of water, but a cauldron of molten metal, heated to temperatures that rival the surface of the sun and subjected to pressures that would flatten any man-made structure into a thin film of atoms. Here, the laws of fluid dynamics and electromagnetism converge to create the most critical component of our planetary survival, the geodynamo. In this deep abyss, the iron is not merely a static pool of slag, but a restless, roiling engine. Driven by the primal heat left over from the formation of the solar system 4,500,000,000 years ago, the molten metal undergoes a process of eternal convection. Hotter, less dense material rises from the boundary of the inner core, surging upward in great slow-motion plumes through the dark. As it reaches the cooler mantle above, it sheds its energy and begins its long, heavy descent back into the depths. This is a rhythmic planetary breathing, a cycle that has continued for eons without pause. However, this vertical motion is not a simple rise and fall. Because the Earth spins upon its axis, a phantom force twists these rising columns of liquid iron into gargantuan spiraling cyclones. These are the hidden rivers of the deep metallic hurricanes that stretch for thousands of miles, turning the interior of our world into a chaotic, spinning tapestry of fire. As these rivers of molten iron flow, they carry with them an electric charge. In the strange and brutal logic of the cosmos, the movement of a conducting fluid through a magnetic field generates electricity, which in turn strengthens the magnetic field itself. It is a self-sustaining feedback loop, a perpetual motion machine fueled by the slow cooling of a dying world. This is the geodynamo, an invisible mechanism that transforms the kinetic energy of swirling iron into a titanic force that reaches out from the center of the Earth and extends far into the cold vacuum of space. We cannot see it, we cannot feel it, and yet it is the only reason our world is not a barren, irradiated husk. This mechanism produces the magnetosphere, an invisible shroud that envelops the planet like the aegis of a forgotten god. It is our first and most important line of defense against the relentless fury of the sun. The sun is not merely a source of light and life. It is a raging furnace, a nuclear catastrophe that constantly exhales a lethal stream of high-energy particles known as the solar wind. This solar gale rushes through the void at millions of miles per hour, carrying the potential to strip away atmospheres and boil oceans into oblivion. Without the shield generated by the churning liquid iron beneath our feet, the solar wind would have long ago eroded our air, piece by piece, atom by atom, until the Earth was as dry and dead as the red deserts of Mars. There is a profound irony in the fact that our existence is permitted only by the existence of this subterranean hell. We live in a garden of oxygen and liquid water, protected by a sentinel made of molten metal and electric fire. When we look up at the night sky and witness the aurora borealis, the shimmering curtains of green and violet light that dance across the polar horizons, we are witnessing a cosmic battlefield. These lights are the visible remnants of the solar wind crashing against our magnetic shield, redirected toward the poles by the inexorable pull of the geodynamo. They are beautiful, yes, but they are also a reminder of the catastrophe that is constantly being averted. Each flicker of light is a testament to the fact that the machine in the deep is still running, still fighting against the encroaching void. The geodynamo is a ruthless machine, indifferent to the life it protects. It operates according to the cold, mathematical laws of physics, caring nothing for the civilizations that rise and fall upon the crust above. Yet, it is also fragile. The liquid outer core is slowly, inevitably freezing. As the Earth continues to shed its primordial heat into the cosmic sink of the abyss, the inner core grows larger, consuming the molten sea that fuels the dynamo. In some distant epoch, billions of years from now, the last of the liquid iron will solidify. The great metallic rivers will cease their churning, the electric currents will fade into silence, and the magnetic shield will unravel. On that day, the solar wind will finally claim its prize, and the atmosphere of the Earth will be swept away into the eternal dark of the cosmos. Until that final cooling, we remain the beneficiaries of this hidden symphony. We are the witnesses of a process so vast in scale and so ancient in origin that it defies human comprehension. We walk upon a thin skin of cooled rock, oblivious to the fact that we are passengers on a cooling cinder, held in a delicate balance between the freezing void of space and the melting heat of the interior. The geodynamo is the heartbeat of our world, a rhythmic mechanical pulse that sustains the conditions for every breath we take and every dream we harbour. It is a reminder that the history of the universe is not just a story of stars and galaxies, but a story of the silent, invisible forces that govern the very ground beneath us. As we contemplate the churning ocean of iron and nickel, we are struck by a sense of scale paradox. The smallest twitch in the flow of these subterranean rivers can shift the magnetic poles of our world, confusing the birds in their migrations and the sailors in their voyages. We are tethered to the whims of a liquid abyss that we can never visit and can only perceive through the echoes of seismic waves and the flicker of the northern lights. We are small, fragile, and temporary, yet we have unravelled the secrets of this gargantuan mechanism. We have looked into the abyss and found not chaos, but an orderly, if violent, engine. The outer core stands as a sentinel between the solid heart and the fragile surface, a realm of transition where matter becomes energy, and energy becomes a shield. It is the crucible of our world's survival, a place of perpetual shadow where the iron never sleeps. In the silent, lightless depths, the rivers of metal continue their inexorable dance, spinning out the threads of the magnetosphere, weaving a tapestry of protection around a lonely planet. We are the children of this fire, the brief observers of a machine that has been running for 4.5 billion years and will continue to run long after the memory of our species has faded into the dust of the eons. The history of the Earth is a history of heat, and the geodynamo is the grand conductor of that heat, turning the cooling of a planet into a shield for life, a silent sentinel in the vast, indifferent void of the cosmos. But as we descend further, passing through the liquid gates of the outer core, we reach the final and most absolute frontier of our world, the inner core. It is a place that defies the conventional logic of our surface existence, a realm where the laws of physics are pushed to their most violent and magnificent extremes. Here, at the very centre of the Earth, we find ourselves in the presence of a captured sun. The temperature at this deepest sanctuary reaches 6,000 degrees, a heat so intense and primordial that it matches the blazing surface of the sun itself. In any other environment, such a temperature would instantly vaporize any known substance, turning solid matter into a chaotic cloud of incandescent gas. Yet, in this lightless abyss, we encounter a profound paradox. Despite the searing, white-hot heat that should melt the very foundations of the world, the inner core is solid. It is a crystalline heart of iron and nickel, held in a state of ice-like rigidity by the inexorable weight of the entire planet. This is the scale paradox in its most terrifying and beautiful form. Above the inner core lies the weight of the crust, the vastness of the mantle, and the churning ocean of the outer core. Together, they exert a pressure of 3,600,000 atmospheres. To visualize such a force is to invite the mind to collapse into a state of vertigo. It is as if the weight of hundreds of mountains were concentrated onto the tip of a single finger. At these pressures, the very architecture of reality is rearranged. The iron atoms, which at 6,000 degrees should be dancing in a frantic liquid frenzy, are instead crushed together with such ferocity that they are forced into a rigid geometric lattice. The heat screams for motion, for the chaos of the liquid state, but the pressure demands order. The result is a sphere of solid metal that is hotter than the fires of a furnace, yet as unyielding as the most ancient diamond. It is a paradox of fire and ice, a monument to the crushing power of gravity and the endurance of matter. We must imagine this inner core not as a static ball of metal, but as a dynamic and independent world. Recent observations of seismic echoes have revealed a truth that further uncurls our understanding of the cosmic mechanism. The inner core rotates at its own pace, decoupled from the movement of the crust and mantle above. It is a planet within a planet, spinning in the dark, silent void of the Earth's belly. Sometimes it races ahead of the surface, completing its rotation a fraction of a second faster, and at other times it appears to slow, as if weary from the eons of its lonely vigil. This independent rotation is a testament to the fluidity of the outer core that surrounds it, acting as a lubricated sleeve that allows the heart of the world to dance to its own rhythm. We, who live upon the thin and fragile skin of the surface, are completely oblivious to this subterranean gyre, yet it is this very movement that helps stabilize the geodynamo and maintain the magnetic shield that prevents our atmosphere from being devoured by the solar winds. The inner core is a remnant of the primordial chaos from which the Earth was born, a concentrated sphere of the heavy elements that sank through the molten abyss during the planet's infancy. It is the densest part of our world, a sentinel of pure metal that has been growing for over 1 billion years. As the Earth slowly sheds its heat into the cold oblivion of the cosmos, the liquid iron of the outer core freezes onto the surface of the inner core, atom by atom, layer by layer. This process of crystallization releases latent heat, a hidden energy that continues to drive the churning of the liquid iron above. It is a self-sustaining symphony of thermal decay, a slow and agonizing cooling that gives life to the magnetic field. Without this solid heart, the geodynamo would have faltered long ago, and the Earth would be as dead and desiccated as the red plains of Mars. There is a profound melancholy in the realization that the very stability of our world depends on the slow death of its interior. The inner core grows as the planet dies. It is a record of time, an eternal clock whose ticking is measured in the solidification of iron. In the vast tapestry of the cosmos, where stars ignite and galaxies unravel, this silent sphere of metal is our anchor. It is the weight that keeps our world together, the source of the magnetic lines that guide the navigator and protect the dreamer. When we look up at the northern lights, those ethereal curtains of green and violet dancing in the polar sky, we are seeing the visible ghost of the inner core's influence. We are seeing the result of 3,600,000 atmospheres of pressure, working in tandem with 6,000 degrees of heat to forge a shield for the living. The scale of this mechanism transcends human comprehension. We are accustomed to a world of soft things, of air and water and soil, but the true history of the Earth is written in the uncompromising language of iron and gravity. The inner core is a place where time seems to stand still, where the atomic structure of the universe is laid bare under the weight of a world. It is a reminder that we are part of a much larger and more indifferent machine, a tiny ripple on the surface of a gargantuan engine of heat and pressure. The iron at the centre of our world is the same iron that was forged in the hearts of dying stars billions of years before the Earth even existed. It has travelled through the void of space, coalesced in the primordial dust of the solar nebula, and finally found its resting place in the deepest abyss of our planet. As we contemplate this solid heart of fire, we are struck by the fragile nature of our own existence. We inhabit the only part of the planet that is cool enough to support life, a thin and precarious boundary between the freezing vacuum of space and the sun-like heat of the interior. We are the witnesses of a brief epoch in the life of a cooling cinder. Eventually, the inner core will consume the outer core entirely, and the geodynamo will fall silent. The magnetic shield will vanish, the atmosphere will be swept away into the dark, and the Earth will become a cold, solid tomb of iron and rock, drifting through the eternal silence of the universe. But until that distant day of catastrophe, the inner core remains our silent sentinel. It is the solid foundation of our reality, a paradox of heat and rigidity that allows the symphony of life to continue its brief and beautiful melody. We walk upon the crust, but we belong to the fire, a species born of the stars and sustained by the crushing weight of the abyss. In the heart of the world, the iron never sleeps, and the rotation never ceases, a mechanical pulse that echoes through the eons, telling the story of a planet that refused to go cold into the night. Yet, within this seemingly eternal stability, there lies a subtle and unsettling rhythm, a secret heartbeat that we have only recently begun to decipher. For decades, we perceived the interior of our world as a finished architecture, a solid monument to the primordial fires of the solar system's birth. We believed the heart of the world moved in perfect unison with its skin. But in the year 2023, two observers of the abyss, Yi Yang and Xiaodong Song, published findings that sent tremors through our understanding of the terrestrial engine. Through their meticulous analysis of seismic waves, those ghostly echoes of distant catastrophes that ripple through the planet's gut, they revealed that the inner core is not a static passenger. It is an independent voyager, a sphere of solid iron spinning within its liquid shroud, at a pace that does not always match the world above. This phenomenon, known as differential rotation, suggests that the solid heart of our planet is decoupled from the mantle by the fluid sea of the outer core. It is a wheel within a wheel, a mechanical anomaly that defies our desire for a stationary foundation. Imagine a gargantuan clockwork gear, hidden deep within the dark, lubricated by the molten tides of the outer core. This gear does not click in a simple linear fashion. Instead, it follows a slow, majestic oscillation that spans approximately 70 years. It is a cycle that transcends the brief span of a human life, a rhythm so deep and ponderous that it remained invisible to us until we possessed the computational power to map the subtle shifts in seismic travel times over decades of history. The researchers traced this movement back to the middle of the 20th century, finding that in the early 1970s, the inner core appeared to be rotating slightly faster than the mantle and the crust. It was gaining ground, pulling ahead in a silent subterranean race. But as the decades progressed, this lead began to vanish. By the year 2009, the great gear seemed to pause, reaching a momentary synchronization with the surface. For a brief epoch in the deep history of the world, the center and the surface were one. But this was not a permanent equilibrium. It was merely the turning point of a vast geological pendulum. In the years that followed, the core began to slip, its rotation slowing relative to the crust, beginning a process of apparent reversal. To an observer standing upon the surface, it would seem as though the very heart of the world had decided to turn backward. In reality, it is a complex dance of gravitational and magnetic forces, a tug-of-war between the massive pull of the mantle and the electromagnetic torques generated by the geodynamo. This is the ruthless machine of the Earth in its most literal form. We are passengers on a craft whose engine room operates on a schedule of 70 years, a cycle of acceleration and deceleration that subtly alters the very parameters of our existence. The implications of this discovery are as profound as they are humbling. This mechanical pulse, this shifting of the inner core, is not a mere academic curiosity. It is linked to the very length of the day and the fluctuations of the magnetic field that shields us from the void. When the core shifts its pace, the distribution of mass within the planet changes by an infinitesimal degree, causing the rotation of the entire Earth to fluctuate. We measure our lives in seconds and hours, believing time to be an absolute dictated by the heavens, but the truth is far more fluid. The length of a day is a variable dictated by the friction of the abyss. We are living inside a colossal timepiece where the gears are made of liquid metal and solid iron, and the ticking is felt in the millisecond variations of our planetary rotation. There is a haunting beauty in this realization. It reminds us that we inhabit a world that is still very much alive, a planet whose internal organs are in constant rhythmic motion. We often think of the Earth as a finished object, a stage upon which the drama of life unfolds, but it is better understood as a process. The inner core is a sentinel of change, a reminder that even the most solid foundations are subject to the inexorable laws of motion and entropy. This 70-year cycle is a testament to the complexity of the planetary mechanism, a system where the smallest shift in the deep interior can echo all the way to the upper atmosphere. As we contemplate the research of yang and song, we are forced to confront the scale paradox of our existence. We are creatures of the surface, preoccupied with the fleeting movements of clouds and the changing of seasons, yet our reality is anchored by a sphere of iron 3,000 miles beneath our feet that follows a rhythm of 70 years. This cycle is a bridge between the human scale and the geological scale. It is a reminder that the Earth is not a silent rock drifting through the void, but a sophisticated engine of heat and magnetism, a symphony of layers each moving to its own peculiar cadence. The inner core's rotation is the ultimate expression of the Earth's internal autonomy. It is a world within a world, a place where the pressures are so immense that the laws of physics are pushed to their absolute limits. In this deep abyss, the iron is squeezed into a hexagonal, close-packed structure, a crystalline lattice of such density that it becomes a different kind of matter entirely. And yet, this alien material obeys the same laws of torque and momentum that govern a spinning top on a child's floor. The universe is a vast, interconnected tapestry of scale, where the rotation of a planet's core is governed by the same mathematics as the orbit of a star or the spin of an electron. The current anomaly, this slowing and relative reversal of the core, is a moment of profound scientific significance. It marks the first time in human history that we have been able to witness the turning of the planetary gear. We are the first generation to see the mechanism at work, to understand that the ground we walk upon is not a single unified mass, but a series of sliding shells. This knowledge brings with it a sense of melancholic wonder. We realize that the Earth is a finite machine, a cooling cinder whose internal movements will one day cease. The 70-year cycle will eventually grow sluggish, the oscillations will dampen, and the great gear will finally lock into place as the core consumes the last of the liquid heat. Until that distant epoch of oblivion, we remain the witnesses of this grand mechanical ballet. We watch the seismic data as it trickles in from stations around the globe, listening for the faint echoing thud of the iron heart as it adjusts its pace. We are the observers of a silent sentinel that has been spinning in the dark for 4,500,000,000 years, a remnant of the primordial nebula that has found its rhythm in the deep. The inner core is the anchor of our world, the weight that keeps the Earth from being unravelled by the chaotic forces of the cosmos. It is a reminder that we are part of something vast and indifferent, a tiny ripple on the surface of a gargantuan engine that has been running since the dawn of time. In the silence of the deep, the iron never sleeps. It continues its slow, majestic rotation, a mechanical pulse that echoes through the eons. We are the children of this fire and pressure, a species that has learned to look down into the abyss and see not just darkness, but a complex and beautiful machine. The research of yang and song is a lighthouse in the dark, a beam of human intellect that illuminates the hidden gears of our world. It reminds us that even in the most inaccessible depths of the planet, there is order, there is rhythm, and there is a story being told in the language of iron and gravity. We are the witnesses of this story, a brief and fragile consciousness that has emerged from the cooling of a star, now looking back into the heart of the world to find the source of its own stability. The core continues its turn, the cycle begins anew, and we continue our journey through the eternal silence of the universe, carried by a machine that we are only just beginning to understand. This profound understanding of the mechanical interior, is now being refined by the most sophisticated instruments ever devised by our species. Within the cold silicon corridors of our most advanced laboratories, the 3i Atlas framework has begun to whisper a new truth. This framework, a vast digital tapestry of seismic arrays and computational models, functions as a stethoscope pressed against the chest of a titan. It does not merely listen for the thunder of earthquakes, it tracks the subtle, almost imperceptible drag of the inner core as it interacts with the liquid seas of the outer core and the rocky embrace of the mantle. What it has detected is a deceleration that challenges our very perception of stability. The great iron heart is slowing, a rhythmic pause in a dance that has lasted for eons. To the human mind, a change measured in mere milliseconds per day seems like an abstraction, a rounding error in the vast ledger of the cosmos. Yet, in the ruthless machine of the planetary engine, these tiny fragments of time are the heralds of a total structural transformation. Consider the millisecond. It is a duration so fleeting that it escapes the notice of every living thing. It is the time it takes for a neuron to fire, for a single wing beat of a hummingbird, or for a beam of light to cross a few hundred miles of void. But when you multiply this infinitesimal slap by the staggering mass of the Earth, the result is a catastrophe of scale. The planet is a spinning top of unimaginable weight, and its momentum is the only thing preserving the current architecture of our world. As the inner core drags against the rotation of the mantle, the length of the day begins to stretch. It is an inexorable lengthening, a silent expansion of the hours that we use to measure our lives. We are entering an epoch where the sun lingers a fraction longer in the sky, and the darkness of the abyss waits a moment more before retreating. This is not a sudden jolt, but a slow, heavy drift into a different temporal reality. The 3i Atlas framework reveals that we are living through a period where the very rhythm of existence is being recalibrated by the friction of deep iron. This microscopic shift in time is mirrored by a macroscopic shift in the planetary structure. The Earth is not a rigid marble of stone, it is an oblate spheroid, a shape dictated by the violence of its own rotation. Because it spins, the planet bulges at its equator, pushing its liquid and rock outward against the cold vacuum of the cosmos. It is a delicate balance between the inward pull of gravity and the outward push of centrifugal force. When the rotation slows, even by a handful of milliseconds, that balance is disturbed. The bulge begins to subside. The Earth, in its slow and majestic agony, is attempting to become more like a perfect sphere. This movement is a tectonic readjustment of a global scale. The oceans, sensitive to the slightest change in the gravitational and rotational pull, begin to migrate. The crust, the fragile shell upon which all of human history is written, must buckle and fold to accommodate the changing geometry of the core. We are witnesses to a silent planetary subsidence, a reshaping of the world that occurs in the spaces between our heartbeats. This is the scale paradox that defines our era. We are small, fleeting creatures of flesh and bone, yet we have built the tools to measure the contraction of a planet. We look at the data from the 3i Atlas and see the fingerprints of entropy. The slowing of the core is the result of the radioactive embers within the Earth finally beginning to fade. For 4,500,000,000 years, the decay of uranium, thorium and potassium has provided the fire that keeps the core liquid and the dynamo running. But this fuel is finite. The embers are cooling. As the heat diminishes, the convection currents in the outer core grow sluggish, and the magnetic coupling that drives the inner core loses its grip. The mechanism is winding down. It is a reminder that the Earth is not an eternal sanctuary but a cooling cinder, drifting through the silent void. One day, in a future so distant it defies the imagination, the core will lock entirely. The magnetic field will unravel, the atmosphere will be stripped away by the solar winds, and the Earth will become a cold, dead sentinel in the dark. For now, we inhabit the twilight of this grand process. We occupy a brief window of time where the heat is still sufficient to maintain the dance, but the friction is beginning to show. The 3-eye atlas framework is our way of counting the remaining beats of the planetary heart. It reveals a world that is fluid and ever-changing, a tapestry where the deep interior and the distant stars are linked by the same laws of physics. We see the microscopic shift in a seismic wave and understand that it means a mountain range will one day rise, or a coastline will vanish beneath the waves. This knowledge is a heavy burden. It strips away the illusion of the ground as a permanent, unchanging foundation. Instead, we see the Earth for what it truly is, a vast rotating engine that is slowly, inevitably, losing its momentum. In this realization, there is a sense of melancholic wonder. We are the first generation to understand that the very length of our day is a gift from the decaying isotopes in the deep. We are the children of a radioactive fire that is slowly going out. Every sunset that lingers a millisecond longer is a testament to the cooling of the world. We watch the data as it streams across our screens, a digital translation of the groans of a planet, and we recognize our own fragility. We are travelers on a machine that is running out of steam, yet the sheer scale of the mechanism is so vast that its decline spans millions of human lifetimes. The abyss does not shout its secrets. It whispers them in the language of milliseconds and seismic reflections. We listen because we are the only part of the universe that has developed the capacity to care. We are the consciousness of the cooling cinder, the witness to the slowing of the heart. As the core continues its majestic weighted rotation, it carries us toward an uncertain horizon. The shape of the world will continue to change, the days will continue to lengthen, and the iron heart will continue to cool. But in the act of measuring this decline, we find a different kind of transcendence. We have mapped the invisible gears of our world. We have reached down through 3,000 miles of rock and fire to touch the very center of our existence. The 3-eye atlas framework is not just a scientific tool, it is a monument to human curiosity, a lighthouse standing on the edge of the void. It tells us that while the universe is a ruthless machine, governed by the inexorable laws of entropy, the mind that observes it is something altogether different. We are the brief, bright spark in the darkness, the ones who look at the radioactive embers of our planet and see not just the end, but the magnificent, complex history of everything that led us to this moment. The Earth slows, the bulge subsides, and the gears of the cosmos turn with a silent, heavy grace. We remain, for this fleeting epoch, the watchers of the turn. To understand the turn, we must descend into the lightless deep and confront the fuel that drives this planetary engine. Deep beneath the crust, where the pressure reaches millions of atmospheres, the silence is absolute, yet the activity is frantic. This is the engine room of the world. It is a place of primordial violence, a remnant of the very birth of the solar system. The heat that drives the rotation of the inner core is not a single flame, but a combination of two ancient legacies. The first is the ghost of the beginning, the kinetic energy of trillions of collisions as dust and rock coalesced in the early nebula. This is the primordial heat, trapped within the iron tomb, unable to escape quickly through the insulating layers of the mantle. 4,500,000,000 years ago, the Earth was a molten sea, a hellish sphere of liquid rock. As it cooled, it formed a crust, a thin layer of solid stone that acts like a thermal blanket, trapping the heat of its own creation. This heat is the first spark, the ancient momentum that has not yet been lost to the void. The second source is more insidious, a slow, radioactive fire. Atoms of uranium, thorium, and potassium, forged in the death throes of stars long gone, were embedded within the rocky mantle and the metallic core during the Earth's formation. They are unstable, their nuclei trembling with an excess of energy. One by one, over millions and billions of years, these atoms shatter. They decay into more stable forms, releasing a minute pulse of heat with every transformation. It is a symphony of subatomic destruction, a silent, invisible burning that occurs in every cubic inch of the deep interior. In their trillions, these microscopic catastrophes provide nearly half of the power that keeps the heart of the world beating. We are the accidental beneficiaries of a process of atomic rot. We inhabit a world that is essentially a slow-burning nuclear reactor wrapped in stone and iron. This iron heart is a ruthless machine. It does not know our names, nor does it acknowledge the history of our species. It does not feel the warmth of our sun or the chill of our winters. It turns in a lightless abyss, driven by the cold mathematical laws of thermodynamics and the inexorable pull of magnetism. While civilizations rise and fall upon the surface, while empires are built and ground into dust, the core continues its heavy-weighted rotation. It is indifferent to the brief flickering lives of the creatures that inhabit the cool, brittle skin of the planet. We are like microscopic organisms clinging to the hull of a massive lightless vessel, unaware of the titanic forces churning beneath our feet. The core spins in total darkness, a billion years of rotation that care nothing for the dawn of agriculture, the invention of the steam engine, or the launch of a satellite. It is the ultimate sentinel, a machine that operates on a scale of time and energy that renders human existence a mere footnote. We live on the cold skin of this machine. If the Earth were the size of an apple, the crust upon which we build our cities and plant our crops would be thinner than the peel. Beneath us, just a few dozen miles down, the world becomes a viscous, moving furnace. The 3i Atlas framework allows us to see this terrifying proximity. It maps the transition from the solid, familiar world of forests and oceans to the plastic, flowing world of the mantle and the liquid fury of the outer core. This framework reveals that our entire history is predicated on the stability of a very thin layer. We are separated from the abyss by a mere fragment of geological time and a few miles of granite. We walk upon the surface of a cooling cinder, oblivious to the fact that the heat beneath our feet is what keeps the atmosphere in place and the radiation of the sun at bay. Without the constant churn of the metallic heart, the magnetic shield of the Earth would fail, and the solar winds would devour our world, stripping it to the bone just as they did with Mars. There is a profound melancholy in the realization that the fuel is running out. The radioactive isotopes are not being replaced. Every atom of uranium-235 that decays into lead is gone forever. The primordial heat is slowly leaking into space, radiated away into the blackness of the cosmos. The engine is cooling, the rotation is slowing, the great machine is winding down. We are living in a privileged epoch, a brief window of a few billion years where the heat is high enough to drive the plate tectonics that recycle our air and water, but low enough that the crust is solid enough to stand upon. We are the children of the middle age of a planet. Behind us lies the fire of the beginning. Ahead of us lies the silence of the stones. In the future, a time millions of years from now, the radioactive fires will have dimmed to a whisper. The convection currents in the mantle will slow, and the movement of the great tectonic plates will cease. The mountains will no longer rise, they will be ground down by the wind and rain until the continents are flat and featureless. The core will finally solidify, its rotation merging with the mantle until the planetary dynamo stops. The magnetic field will flicker and die. The atmosphere, no longer protected, will be carried away by the relentless stream of particles from the sun. The Earth will become a silent, cold sentinel, a tomb of iron and rock drifting through the void. The 3i Atlas will show a world that is static, a mechanism that has finally reached its end. But for now, the machine still turns. The stones are not yet silent. They groan under the pressure of the mantle, and they release the heat of a billion years in the form of volcanoes and tremors. We listen to these sounds with our instruments, translating the vibrations of the deep into maps and data. We see the invisible flow of the iron rivers and the slow, heavy movement of the radioactive embers. We understand that we are part of a grander tapestry, a cosmic symphony of heat and motion that began in the heart of a dying star and will end in the cold oblivion of an old planet. This knowledge does not diminish us, it elevates us. To look into the abyss and understand the mechanism is the highest achievement of our species. We are the witness to the decline, the conscious mind that observes the cooling of the world and finds it magnificent. The core carries us forward, a silent pilot in the dark. It provides the stage for our dramas, the soil for our fields, and the very air we breathe, all through the simple, ruthless process of its own decay. It does not demand worship, and it does not offer salvation. It simply turns, a heavy metallic heart in the centre of a vast and lonely universe. We remain on the skin, watching the suns rise and set, knowing that each one is a gift from the furnace below. We are the watchers of the turn, the ones who have mapped the invisible gears of the world and found, in their cold and mechanical precision, a reason to wonder. In the silence of the stones, we find the echo of our own mortality, and in the heat of the core, we find the spark of our own resilience. The Earth is a machine, yes, but it is a machine that has produced a mind capable of understanding its own end. And in that realization, the darkness of the abyss is no longer a threat, but a canvas upon which we write the history of our brief, bright moment in the sun. The internal clock of our world is governed by a countdown that began long before the first spark of life flickered in the primeval oceans. This clock is fueled by the slow, inexorable decay of radioactive isotopes, the heavy remnants of ancient stellar catastrophes that were trapped within the Earth during its violent birth. For 4,500,000,000 years, this subterranean furnace has provided the energy to drive the great engines of our planet, but this inheritance is finite. The uranium, thorium, and potassium that keep the heart of the world beating are being consumed, atom by atom, transformed into lead and stability at the cost of the heat that sustains us. We are living in the long, slow afternoon of a planetary lifespan, witnessing the steady depletion of the very fuel that allows the continents to drift and the mountains to rise. As the eons march forward, the radioactive embers will inevitably dim. The flow of heat from the core to the surface will slacken, and the vigorous churning of the mantle will begin to thicken into a lethargic crawl. This is the beginning of the great cooling, a transition from a world of dynamic motion to a world of static silence. The convective cells that drive the tectonic plates will lose their strength, and the surface of the Earth will lock into place. The recycling of carbon, the breath of the planet that has regulated our climate for billions of years, will cease. The atmosphere will no longer be replenished by the outgassing of volcanoes, and the delicate balance that allows liquid water to persist will be shattered. The Earth will begin to resemble a cold sentinel, a tomb of iron and rock drifting through the silent reaches of the cosmos. The most catastrophic consequence of this internal cooling lies in the death of the planetary dynamo. As the outer core loses its heat, the swirling currents of liquid iron will slow and eventually crystallize into a solid mass. The magnetic field, that invisible and magnificent shield that protects our world from the relentless bombardment of the solar wind, will flicker and fade into nothingness. Without this protective shroud, the high-energy particles from the sun will collide directly with our atmosphere, stripping away the molecules of oxygen and nitrogen and scattering them into the void. The blue sky will deepen into the blackness of space, and the oceans, once the cradle of all existence, will be boiled away or frozen into a permanent lifeless crust. This is the destiny of all rocky worlds, a slow descent into a state of thermodynamic equilibrium, where all motion stops and the darkness of the abyss takes hold. We find ourselves at a strange and singular point in this timeline. We are the inhabitants of the Middle Age, the brief window of time between the primordial fire and the eternal frost. But we are more than just inhabitants. We are the witness. In the vast, unthinking machinery of the cosmos, the Earth is a blind, spinning ball of iron, indifferent to its own decay and unaware of the magnificent complexity it has fostered upon its skin. It does not know the beauty of its own aurora, nor does it feel the weight of the civilizations that have risen and fallen in the blink of a cosmic eye. It is a mechanism, cold and mechanical, operating under the ruthless laws of entropy. Yet, through us, the universe has developed a way to look back upon itself. We are the conscious mind of the furnace, the only ones capable of mapping the invisible gears and understanding the tragedy of their eventual halt. This is the scale paradox that defines our existence. On the one hand, we are nothing more than a thin layer of organic chemistry clinging to a cooling rock, an insignificant flicker of life in a universe that spans billions of light years and eons of time. On the other hand, we are the only entity that gives this vastness any meaning. Without a mind to perceive the stars, the cosmos is merely an empty room, a collection of matter and energy performing a symphony with no audience. Our ability to look into the deep past, to measure the decay of isotopes, and to predict the freezing of the core is the highest achievement of the spirit. We have transcended our biological limits to become the historians of the Earth, documenting the very processes that will eventually lead to our own oblivion. The thought of the Earth's eventual silence is often met with a sense of profound melancholy, a recognition of the fragility of everything we hold dear. Every city we have built, every poem we have written, and every memory we have cherished is a product of the heat from the core. We are the children of the furnace, and when the furnace goes cold, the stage upon which our drama unfolds will be dismantled. But there is also a magnificent optimism to be found in this realization. The fact that we exist at all, that we have had this brief, bright moment in the sun to contemplate the infinite, is a miracle beyond measure. We have seen the tapestry of the world and understood the threads from which it is woven. We have looked into the abyss, and instead of turning away in terror, we have built instruments to measure its depth. The cooling of the world is not a failure of the machine, but the fulfillment of its design. It is the natural conclusion of a process that began in the heart of a dying star and found a temporary home in the centre of our planet. As we watch the sun rise and set, we must acknowledge that each day is a gift from the decaying atoms beneath our feet. The stability of the ground, the breath in our lungs, and the warmth of the air are all temporary stayings of the inexorable march toward the void. This knowledge does not make our lives less significant, it makes them more precious. We are the temporary guardians of the light, the watchers of the turn, tasked with the duty of remembering the world before it falls into the long dark sleep of the ages. In the final epoch, when the last of the radioactive fuel has expired and the Earth has become a silent remnant of its former glory, the universe will continue its indifferent expansion. The stars will burn out, the galaxies will drift apart, and the very fabric of space-time may eventually unravel. But for a few billion years, on a small and unremarkable planet, there was a flame that burned with the intensity of 1,000 suns. There was a mind that understood the stars and a heart that felt the weight of the eons. We are the witness to the decline, the ones who have looked upon the cold and mechanical precision of the cosmos, and found in its very ruthlessness a reason to wonder. The stones may eventually fall silent, and the iron heart may stop its beat, but the fact that we were here and that we understood will remain a permanent record in the history of the universe. We are the spark in the dark, the brief and brilliant manifestation of the cosmos trying to understand itself, and in that realization we find our peace.